Thanksgiving Day edition of Down on the Farm. You know, there are very few days during the year I take off. The Thanksgiving Day and the day after are two of those. The folks at Farm Bureau help us with this edition of Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Hello and welcome to Farm Bureau Roundup. Happy Thanksgiving. As the last few days of November are upon us, farmers in the Texas Panhandle are hoping for the best on their winter wheat crop, while farmers in the Rolling Plains are thankful for very good cotton yields. But across the state, agricultural producers are disappointed with the latest EPA water rule proposal.
In the Texas Panhandle, our fall weather so far has been very dry and on many days exceptionally warm, and those conditions have not been good for winter wheat. I'm James Hunt in Amarillo, and I'll bring you that story.
Cotton harvest is progressing well with open weather, a strong market, and some good yields here on the Rolling Plains. Hello, I'm Barry Mahler, and I have the story in today's report.
Annual ryegrass, a cool season annual forage often utilized by livestock producers for winter grazing. However, it's often deemed an enemy of many a hay producer in East Texas. I'm Dr. Vanessa Olson from Overton.
There are a few things we can do to prepare our plants for cold weather, but maybe not extreme like we had last year. Please join me, John Begno, as we talk about preparing plants for winter.
Neighbor Tom Nicoletti will be back with the first vignette from Farm Bureau Roundup after this from your local Texas Farm Bureau Insurance Company.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Visit Texas Farm Bureau Insurance today at tfbinsurance.com to find an insurance agent who's a true neighbor. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Visit Texas Farm Bureau Insurance today at tfbinsurance.com to get insurance for Texans by Texans. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Starting in the Texas Panhandle this week, where the weather in that region this fall has not been helpful for winter wheat. James Hunt reports from Amarillo.
Here in the Texas Panhandle, we've had almost no rain since late September, and even though we've had a number of early mornings where our temperatures have dipped below freezing, our daytime highs on many days have been unusually warm for autumn, in some cases to a record-setting degree. Texas A&M AgriLife agronomist Jordan Bell says with that combination of factors, there are some areas around the region where winter wheat is beginning to look very stressed.
Because of above average fall temperatures, we still have a crop that hasn't gone dormant yet. It is actively growing and using water, and where that wheat has run out of water, it's starting to look very water stressed. Now, there were some pockets in the Panhandle that did receive some very timely rainfall into September, and that really did help producers who were trying to get wheat in the ground early, and producers who were able to capitalize on that rainfall and plant at that time have much better stands than producers who are dusting wheat in right now. And we have a lot of fields where wheat has barely come up and fields where wheat was just dusted in and we still don't have a stand.
Of course, with harvest time still 6 or 7 months away, we're on the early side of this current wheat season, and a lot can happen in the months ahead. But right now, it would seem that if we're going to be seeing strong production throughout the Panhandle, we're really going to be putting winter wheat's reputation for resilience to the test.
That's for sure. And of course, we do have quite a bit of wheat that is under irrigation, and because of those warm conditions, many producers have left those pivots on just a little longer, and those fields do look phenomenal. But I will say, like you and I have been talking about the past couple of years, much of that wheat is actually intended for silage now. And so it will be interesting to see actually what goes to grain versus what goes to forage.
Indeed it will. Always appreciate getting these crop updates from Dr. Jordan Bell of AgriLife. And to get a little plug in here, Dr. Bell will be one of the presenters for the educational sessions AgriLife is offering at next week's Amarillo Farm and Ranch Show. That's right, the show is back coming up November 30th through December 2nd at the Amarillo Civic Center. For Farm Bureau Roundup in Amarillo, I'm James Hunt.
On the Texas Rolling Plains, the cotton harvest is progressing nicely with very good yields of the crop. But as Barry Mahler reports from Wichita Falls, the grades of the cotton are taking a hit.
Cotton harvest continues here on the Rolling Plains with some very good yields being reported. Now, this crop got off to a late start last spring with rainy weather delaying planting and leaving just enough time to get the crop in before the crop insurance deadline in June. Now, that delayed planting created some problems early on as there was not enough time for a replant, and there were quite a few acres that were abandoned early due to lack of stand. Now, cotton does not fare well with excessive rainfall right after planting, as it can cause a poor stand of plants, and due to this lack of stand, some of the acres just didn't make it. Adequate moisture was there across a lot of the plains up until late August and into early September, just when a lot of the fruit from this late crop was trying to mature into good fiber, and this presented a problem that's showing up in the grades this year. As the plant is trying to mature, the fiber in the bolls, it takes a lot of moisture and good nutrition to turn it out well, and that dry spell left a gap in that process. Most cotton is graded here in the U.S. to determine the quality of the fiber, and if you've ever heard the expression fair to middling as a reply when asking an older person how they are, this is actually an old cotton classing term from a long time ago, with good middling being good quality cotton. Now, this grading process, which started back in 1907, is a tool to help farmers market their crop and help end users find the quality of cotton for their particular product. For example, fine garments would require cloth made from a higher grade cotton than, say, padding for a mattress or chair. The higher the quality, the higher the price paid to the farmer. That late season dry spell left some of the crop grading lower than usual. The higher world price and strong demand for the fiber is offsetting some of that quality price loss, and producers are reporting yields that are helping to make this a good year even with the problems we're seeing. The Board of Trade price has been over $1 a pound this season, and when you combine that with reports of 2 bales per acre on the good ground and maybe a bale of production in a lot of other places, it's a pretty good year to have cotton in the field. Now, this good year for cotton comes at a time when more acres are showing up here on the Rolling Plains as farmers are constantly searching for a crop that will provide a profit and at the same time offer a rotation from their traditional wheat and cattle operations. Reporting from North Central Texas, I'm Barry Mahler for Farm Bureau Roundup.
Nationwide, farmers and ranchers are disappointed with the latest Environmental Protection Agency's proposed water rule. More from Gary Joyner in Waco.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency wants to reintroduce the definition of the waters of the United States to a definition that was established in 1986 and in place through 2015. That definition was overly complicated. It unfairly regulated large areas of private land miles from the nearest navigable water, including property in Texas. The answer was the Navigable Waters Protection Rule established by the Trump administration. It was a workable definition that provided regulatory certainty to landowners while protecting our waterways. That rule is now being washed away. Farmers and ranchers are disappointed in the EPA announcement. EPA will soon initiate a new rulemaking to define federal jurisdiction. Agriculture awaits to see what those plans are. Farmers and ranchers hope to have a seat at the table when the framework of the new rule is discussed. It's too important for our nation's food, fiber, and fuel to not be included. I'm Gary Joyner for Farm Bureau Roundup.
Cool season ryegrass can stunt the growth of warm season grasses. Dr. Vanessa Olson has some recommendations on how to manage that unwanted ryegrass.
Volunteer annual ryegrass can be common in hay meadows. Winter rainfalls can promote seed germination, and seeds can survive for multiple years in our soils. Later maturity of annual ryegrass can delay or prevent our warm season perennial forages, such as Bermuda grass or Bahia grass, from breaking dormancy in April or May, therefore delaying our initial hay cutting. So how do we manage this unwanted ryegrass? If your hay meadow happens to be fenced as well as have a source of water, grazing can be an excellent way to utilize the high-quality forage as well as remove it from the hay meadow. We could also bale it. Harvesting ryegrass for baleage or a dry hay is an option. Baleage or haylage is forage baled at 50 to 60% moisture. It is then preserved in an airtight plastic wrap. Harvesting for a dry hay product can be tricky during years we have ample spring rainfall. Another option is to spray it. The use of herbicides to control annual ryegrass is probably the most common method practiced. As with any herbicide application, timing is critical along with following label directions. Ideally for control, ryegrass needs to be sprayed when plants are less than 6 inches in height in the fall. Annual ryegrass is generally susceptible to post-emergent herbicides in early winter prior to freezing temperatures and before seed head emergence. Unfortunately for Bahia grass growers, there are no selective herbicides available for post-emergent control of annual ryegrass. For rates and any restrictions, refer to product labels. Another option is to outcompete it. Maintaining some substantial Bermuda grass or Bahia grass stubble height greater than 4 inches could provide some shade that could reduce ryegrass seed germination. This may not provide 100% control. Maintaining a higher stubble height can also be beneficial for the warm season perennial future growing season. Higher stubble height means more substantial root structure to capture deeper soil moisture and nutrients. This is Dr. Vanessa Olson with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in Overton for the Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Finally today, preparing plants for the winter. Horticulturist John Begnaud has advice on how to protect that landscape you worked so hard to maintain throughout the year from the cold winter temperatures.
Well, that big freeze we had last February, it was hard to prepare for. And the fact that we've had late fall freezes this year, for the most part in most of Texas, means our plants have had time to condition themselves for the first freeze. And usually our first freeze is not something that's down in the teens or zeros through a central Texas or all the way cold to South Texas, for instance. We have conditioning cold weather. What you can do is remember that if you get surprised by an extreme cold spell, it's always good to make sure your plants are hydrated. That means turf grass is watered, shrubs have a drink if they haven't had a rain in the recent week or two. The exception to this seems to be palm trees. There's a lot of research that shows that if they're on the dry side, they can withstand cold weather a little better than on the wet side. We're constantly asked about covering plants during cold spells, and you'd hopefully chosen plants in your landscape that can withstand cold enough weather in your average climate, and covering is not necessary. But if you have stepped out of bounds and you want to cover something, plastic is a bad choice. Material, cotton cloth or canvas, something like this to cover helps to insulate it. It keeps the ground a little warmer. That radiant heat also helps to keep the plants warm. If you planted some plants that might not have gotten established well during the summer, planted them late, for instance, like lantana and some of these other plants that can be sensitive to cold weather, it's not a bad idea to pile some mulch around them. Just cover that crown with 6 inches, 8 inches of mulch, and you'll get a condition where it just prevents the crown from freezing. And they will come back from the crown in the spring of next year. Hibiscus, hardy hibiscus. There's a whole list of plants that it does not hurt to do this. The National Weather Service is calling for a drier and warmer winter, but if you look at the Farmer's Almanac across Texas, it says that it's likely to have another really cold snap in January, February of 2022. And it's hard to prepare for that, but you can prepare for those moderate freezes right now. This is John Begnaud reporting for Texas Farm Bureau Roundup from San Angelo.
That is our program for this week. Thank you for joining us. Be with us again next time as we travel to the Rio Grande Valley, the Coastal Bend, and central, eastern, and western Texas. Happy Thanksgiving. For everyone at Farm Bureau Roundup, I'm Tom Nicoletti, and this is the Texas Farm Bureau Radio Network.